So, what happens when a successful CEO experiences a profound spiritual awakening at age 50? In this fascinating episode, I sit down with spiritual life coach, energy intuitive, and channeler Jeffrey Eisen to explore his remarkable journey from the corporate world to channeling the wisdom of Shaltazar. We discuss how Jeffrey discovered and developed his intuitive gifts, his practical 5 step process for connecting with higher guidance, and what he believes the growing chaos, division, and negativity in our world can teach us about consciousness, duality, and the evolution of the human spirit. If you've ever wondered why we're here or how to find peace in our increasingly chaotic world, this conversation is for you.
Welcome to Dial Up Intuition, a podcast that invites you to awaken and expand your intuition. I'm your host, Kat Sanders. I was a radio and television broadcaster before a massive brain hemorrhage caused me to flatline. That life-changing event led to a beautiful near-death experience. And when I came back, I returned with some profound truths and the ability to connect with the other side. In this podcast, we'll explore these truths and learn how to strengthen your intuition and intuitive gifts. You'll hear conversations with remarkable intuitives who'll share how their gifts came alive, evolved, and became part of their daily lives. So whether you're just beginning your intuitive journey or you're ready to go deeper, this is your space to be inspired, guided, and reminded that your intuitive gift was always within you. So let's begin and dial up our intuition together.
All right. I am happy today to introduce to you Jeffrey Eisen, who is a spiritual coach, energy intuitive, author, and channeler of the wisdom of Shaltazar. After spending more than 30 years as the president and CEO of a successful steel business, Jeffrey experienced a profound inner shift at the age of 50 that led him onto a new path of self-discovery, healing, and spiritual awakening. Today, Jeffrey helps people reconnect with their inner wisdom, trust their intuition, and create more conscious, meaningful lives. Through his coaching, writing, oracle deck card, and the channeled teachings of Shaltazar, his work is dedicated to awakening, empowering, and inspiring others to live with greater awareness, authenticity, and heart. So welcome, Jeffrey. I am really excited to have you here.
Thank you so much, Kat. Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh, I'm really, really glad we've had a chance to chat a little bit. And you have got some great wisdom and great ideas. And you love rocks, which means you and I were definitely destined to be
kindred
friends.
Spirit, right?
Yes. That's exactly right. So you really discovered all of this at the age of 50. But did you have intuition or other, ways of knowing this was coming before 50?
No. My life path was very interesting that way. I as a matter of fact, I'm thinking about writing a book about my do-over and the two lives of Jeffrey Eisen, because it's been so fantastic that for 50 years I lived what I would say a more traditional life based on I was born in the 50s, and so raised with those traditional values, and I did that for about 50 years, and the last 20 some years have been that do-over, and it's just like night and day. And I find people's awakenings very fascinating because there are no two the same. I've been privileged to coach some people who have had more instantaneous awakenings, and that's kind of neat. Mine was sort of more of a gradual. I guess I kind of hung on to the old, but was getting some nudgings from spirit that that the old wasn't going to do it anymore, that there had to be more to life, and they encouraged me to broaden my perspective, and as a consequence, wound up shifting about 180 degrees. So I have this more awakened, somewhat enlightened, higher consciousness person for the last 24 years, and a very traditional person for the first 50. And I know that was for purpose because I am here to help the people that I was.
That makes sense. So, but you were in the steel business before. So, yeah, so you went from a very typical life to something pretty incredible. So, once you realized that you had these abilities, how did you kind of develop or work with them?
Yeah, that's interesting. And so, in order to get a better sense of that, I'd love to share how I discovered, so to speak, the gift that all of us have. Um, as I as I as the company was growing, and this is sort of the breadcrumbs kind of nudges that I got from the universe. As the company was growing, and I was approaching 50, we needed to think of more things like training and culture because it was a family business, and we were up to about 80 employees, and I hired a human resources consultant to come in and help with training and culture and all of those things. And the consultant we hired was really a great guy, and we got along. And as well as corporate culture, he was kind of into some personal development. At the time, I was starting to read leadership books, and as I look back, it's like, oh, okay, I get it. They were taking me away from that singular focus of selling steel for profit, and I started to read some leadership books, and he turned me on to some personal development books, and it was like, wow, that's kind of interesting because I had dropped out of university after second year. I don't even have a university degree to go back into the family business. My father's brother, who was his partner, passed away at a young age. I really felt sorry for my father. Didn't realize at the time it was really all about me getting recognition and appreciation and love from my father. All he seemed to care about was the business. So if I went into the business, gee, he's going to recognize me. And that strategy didn't work, but I understand why, because he was looking for the same thing I was, that recognition. And so I start reading these personal development books, and it was like really kind of neat. One of the first books that I read, the author really resonated with me. I came back off a vacation after reading one of his books. It was Robin Sharma's The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. And I set the intention, gee, I really would like to work with him. I spoke to him at a break and hired him as a coach, and for some outrageous amount that I would never pay for again. But obviously, with a nudge from the universe, I decided to do that. One of his practices that he encouraged me to do was early awakening, to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and to read and meditate and journal. And the journaling part was like, that's kind of interesting. At the same time, I was starting to embark on some healing modalities. And I remember going to a shaman who scanned my body and told me that my lower chakras were like a tar field of unexpressed emotions. Now, no coincidence, I had suffered gastrointestinal uh, um, issues for most of my life. I had Crohn's disease from my mid 20s. I had bleeding ulcers when I was a teenager. So it all started to make sense. And I used this journaling to start expressing the emotional trauma that I had been keeping inside me. And for the first a while, that's all I was doing, is just pouring out these emotions. And I'd like to say I was cleaning out the swamp, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And as I did, I really liked the journaling practice, and I found myself starting to ask questions about life. And lo and behold, on the page, there were some answers that came that were very, very profound and very insightful. And I would read them to my wife, and she said, "Where'd that come from? That can't be you. You didn't write that." And it's like, well, I did, but yeah, you're right. It doesn't really sound like me. And in the beginning, I thought I was talking to God, like Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God. And that went on for a while. And eventually I sensed that it was more of a collective and names started to pop up. And I just kept this on for a long time. And then began to realize that I was channeling some energy, some entity that I came to know as Shaltazar, the Gavish Bani Nu, which I came to know as the transmitter of divine wisdom. I knew them in the beginning as the energy of 33, which is the master teacher. And I built this amazing relationship through my journaling. And I then would keep going back and rereading them and applying what came through and realized this is too much just for me. I have to share it with the world. And that was the beginning of my channeling, so to speak.
Wow, that's great. So you kind of implied or mentioned that you feel that anyone could have these abilities to connect in to intuition, to the other side, whatever you want to call it. And I've talked to people that say, oh, no, that's only for special people. So how do you feel, or why do you feel that this is something anyone can do?
Well, if we kind of think about it logically, and don't forget, I came from an extremely logical perspective where there were times probably where I wondered whether there was a God. Um, and if this ultra logical left brain thinking guy could start to connect, then why wouldn't everybody? And the question that I would ask those that say it's only for certain people, I mean, why would that make sense? Why would that make sense that the higher power would choose? To me, that kind of sounds more like a human thing, right? You
Right.
know, top of the class, special ones, anointed ones. But from the God that I know, the source, the universe, the universal intelligence, whatever you wish to call it, just really found it hard to believe. And so it's sort of like, well, if I can do this, then I want to teach other people to do this. And I think that the perspective of only certain people can do that is actually coming from the very place that prevents us from doing it. It's logical. I mean, we are oneness. You had a near-death experience. You know what that's like. You experience that unconditional love. You experience that unity. You experience that oneness. If that's where we came from, why would we not all be entitled to communicate with it? Why do we have to have a near-death experience to do it? And so I have spent a lot of time and effort teaching people how they can connect. And of course, one of the big blocks for people is that they try to think their way to connecting, and that's not how it works. The only reason I was able to connect in the first place is because I got out of my head. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. The room was dark. I was playing quiet music. I had just finished meditating and I was free flow journaling, and words came onto the page. And when I let go of my mental guard, when I let go of my logic, it came through and it kept coming through and it still keeps coming through. And so I love to teach people of how to connect to the unseen world. And although it's somewhat contrary, I kind of have a 5-step approach. Although, why would there be steps if there's no logic to it? But we kind of like steps. So I am totally convinced that we all have that. And when I was, at the beginning of my journey, I would go to all kinds of workshops. I would go to healers and I would sit out in the audience and say, yeah, I want to be able to do that. But what I have come to learn, what Shaltazar has shared with me, is we each have a unique gift. So the way you connect as a medium and the way I connect as a channeler is we're doing the same thing, but we're just doing it differently. And we all have this unique gift. We all have this special way of connecting. And if you start realizing that it is an individual, unique way of connecting to the unseen world, there isn't one size fits all. And the example I like to use sometimes is that you are born as identical twins. And there's this strong connection that you have with your identical twin. But for whatever reason, your identical twin is swooped away and is taken to a far off galaxy where there is no language, where the culture, where everything is very different, very advanced civilization. And at some point in your life, you feel this longing of this family member because it's identical twins. You came from the same DNA, and you begin to connect to this identical twin, but you have to learn how to connect in a non-vocal way, in a non-language way, and all of a sudden you're able to do that. That's sort of how I envision how we want to be able to realize that we can connect, because what we are trying to connect to, that identical twin, is where we came from. We came from source. We will go back to source. You shared with me before how we should not be afraid of that. We should not be afraid of going back to where we came from. So why wouldn't we be able to communicate with where we came from?
That makes complete sense. Yeah. I mean, one of my lessons was source, God, doesn't matter what you call source, many names, said in my near-death experience, I love all my children, is the way he expressed it. I love all people. So why would he say, but you're special, so you get to have this ability and that one does? It wouldn't make any sense whatsoever. And knowing that everyone would have that ability, and everyone is completely unique. Some people have talents, worldly talents, physical talents that are, writing. Some have artistic talents. So when you have talents in the spiritual world, some of you are going to be mediums, some of you are going to be healers, some of you are going to be clairvoyant, some will be channelers, and some will be mediums or animal communicators. And you're right, everyone will have that ability, and the way that you connect, like you said, will also be special or different. I raise my vibrations because I can remember and put myself back into that near-death experience, and my vibrations go through the roof immediately because I can remember that pure, unconditional love. And I also am able to bring myself to that loving, heart-centered place by remembering a cat that I used to have that I loved so much, and he used to lay on my shoulder and purr in my ear. And if I remember that loving feeling of just being loved by this cat, I'm instantly raising my vibrations. Well, you didn't have that cat, so you can't use that. So even if you were my twin, you can't do it that way. You have to have your way.
Well, and I think that's what deters people, because they really believe. I mean, when you go to school, you learn math, you learn science, there is a correct way and an incorrect way. But communicating with the unseen world is not that, It is, we communicate in a sensory way, not in a logical way. And so, one of the big deterrents is the fact that we think there is an acceptable way to connect. And if we don't do it that way, well, that moves you to the energy of the left brain, and we connect with the right brain, so it's never going to happen.
That's right.
A couple of other points. Shaltazar has led me to believe that implanted in our DNA, we all have a unique gift. We cannot necessarily label it. We cannot explain it. And it often takes a lifetime to try and connect to it, cultivate it, and to be able to use it. There is absolutely, yours, comes through mediumship. Mine comes through channeling. It's all of the same. And so if you realize that your gift is unique, you'll stop trying to copy what someone tells you about your ability to connect to the unseen world. The other thing to keep in mind is that the people that are trying to keep you away from connecting to the unseen world by telling you that it's only for certain people, I believe are humans that have a human agenda and not messengers of the source, because as you said, the messengers of the source want everyone to connect.
That's right.
So, and it's kind of interesting, both you and I are using different names for that higher power. When I went on my spiritual journey, I had to let go of the name God because it reminded me of my the religion that I was born into, and I could not use that name because it represented what I was taught. It represented what I was taught. So for the longest time, I had to use Source or another name. Now, like you, I'm quite all right calling it Source, God, the universe. It doesn't matter because we know it is not what we were taught. And one of the things that is a bit of a buggity boo to me, and I truly believe we do it unconsciously, it makes no sense to me that that higher power could be masculine. And we refer to it as he. I think, if anything, it's got a better chance of being a she than a he because of that feminine energy. And although I try not to be disrespectful, I refer to that higher power as it, because and it helps me realize, because if I identify it with the masculine energy, I'm going to go to my left brain. My religion taught me about the king like energy sitting on a throne with a beard, dealing out consequences. That's not the higher power that I believe in. And before we got on, we were chatting. One of the more memorable things that I remember is in the ancient text, the Kabbalion, which is the teachings of Hermes Trismegistus. They call that higher power the all, and they say the all is unknowable and unthinkable, and I would suggest also incomprehensible. And if we are trying to figure that out, which we are not allowed to figure out, that's going to stop us from connecting. So you kind of gotta, when I was journaling, the way I connected, there was a phrase that came out just about every day that I journaled, and it was release, let go, and surrender. And every time I would be frustrated and I say, okay, come to me with a message. Have you got a message? Right. And of course, I was in my head looking for that message. And there it is. I'm writing on the paper, release, let go, and surrender. I remembered closing my eyes, taking a deep breath. Sometimes I was instructed to put the pen down. And as I released, let go, and surrender, and there is an art to that. Shaltazar has taught me, and I've channeled some messages about the sacred art of release, let go, and surrender. And then when I would let go, then the messages would start to come. I mentioned, I believe, that there's a few steps that we can practice to get in touch with the unseen world. I believe step number one is preparation. That's where meditation comes in. Shaltazar says, quiet the mind and open the heart. And so there's, the sure way of preventing any messages to come through is saying, okay, all right, I need a message. Okay, okay, right. I mean, if you engage the left brain, you are shutting out that communication. It's like your cell phone or your cell service or your Wi-Fi being scrambled and having such interference that the minute you go to that trying hard, that left brain, you are going to interrupt the communication. So the key is to quiet the mind, open the heart, and there are different ways of preparation. It could be out in nature, it could be meditation, it could be yoga, it could be all kinds of things. The second step is what I call the sensory download. And this is kind of interesting because I believe the universe communicates with us in a sensory way. You talked about clairvoyant, claircognizant, clairsentient. We've heard many times there are four major pathways. Shaltazar leads me to believe there are numerous sensory pathways. So anybody that is looking to get a message from a left brain mental perspective, you're going to shut it out. That's the interference. So you want to get into that very relaxed place. You want to get a sensory message. You get it from your cat. I get it from nature, all those sensory ways. And after the sensory download, step number 2 is the translation or transcription. And I think that's really, really important to understand that the universe does not speak a language. Whether we're talking, about the masters, the Buddha, Krishna, Jesus, whoever, the words that they brought forth were not necessarily the words of the higher power. It was their translation of those words. And that's important to realize. And I make it quite clear to people, if you're listening to the messages of Shaltazar, the words you hear are my translation of what I believe they are telling me. And I say they because I believe Shaltazar to be a collective, of course, non-gender. And so those words come through my filter. They come through my filter. And in the beginning, when I heard channelers, I would think that the word that I was listening to was the word of the higher power of source. But I have come to realize it is not. It is a translation. It is a translation. The next step I call the interpretation. And, a lot of the religious doctrine, we have spent centuries looking at those words and trying to interpret and reinterpret. And what does that mean? And there's one example I like to give. In one of the messages of Shaltazar, I translated the message, part of that message, as be still, be more still, be still again. And you could think that's just very redundant. That's kind of poetic. But when I looked at the interpretation, what I interpreted was be still, quiet the mind. That makes sense. Be more still. Oh, what does that mean? That means there are levels of stillness, and you can, with practice, go to deeper and deeper levels of stillness. And the more stillness you go to, the more you are closing out all of your filters, the more you are getting out of your mind, the more you can connect in a more solid way, in a stronger way with the unseen world. So be more still is telling you to go deeper and deeper into stillness. Obviously, in your near-death experience, that was the stillness of stillness. You were out of the picture, right? You were not there. That was the still of the still. And then when they say be still again, they're saying it requires practice. So that's just a very flippant example of how the interpretation of your translation can allow you for deeper and deeper learning, allow you to move into deeper levels of the learning, because I believe that the universe sends us guidance that is somewhat like a treasure hunt. They will give you breadcrumbs, and they will not give you the whole plan. We live on the planet of free choice, and it is up to us to discover through our translation and interpretation what is it that they are encouraging us, showing us, giving us wisdom to apply. And the final step is implementation, because I see so many people that get that guidance and they don't put it into practice. They don't do something with it. Okay, I received my guidance from Shaltazar, and I believe, as most of us that connect to the unseen world, we're encouraged to share that with a wider audience. We're encouraged to bring forth what we have learned and share it to make the world a better place. Well, if we don't take any action, if we don't act on the guidance, okay, then it's not going to happen.
We, as a world right now, are going through I'm going to say a difficult time emotionally. There's so many people who are going through a lot of fear, uncertainty, confusion. And in my intuitive ability, I feel it. I feel fear from so many people. And it's just a very intense feeling right now. And, I've heard, of course, of the awakening, and that we are going through a change that so many more of us will be transforming literally our DNA, is what I've heard, to be beings that are, capable of doing much more. So, what is your opinion of this? Or have you talked to Shaltazar, and well, they come up with any ideas of what we are to expect? Any
Right.
timelines
Yeah.
or
Excellent.
ideas?
Yeah. Well, I will start with the last part, timelines. My understanding that is in the higher realms, there is no time, there is no space. So the timeline's up to us. So let me go back to why we are experiencing this. Shaltazar has led me to believe that we are in the energy of the great potential for change, where no change is not an option. There were other civilizations that have gone through this. So, one of the things we have to understand, as we talked about before, is our planet being influenced by an energy that we cannot understand? 100%. And if we try to figure it out logically, you will be very confused, because if this all loving, all being, all knowing force that we call the source, God, Yahweh, the universal intelligence, wants change, one might assume that it would be done in a very loving way. But I believe what we are going through is encouraging us to make those changes, because we live on the planet of free choice. The emotional upheaval that we are feeling is coming forth, I believe, not as punishment, but as opportunity. And I am sure that as you were experiencing your near-death experience, you did not think that there was an upside to what you went through. Until you went through it, until you started to connect to your gift and you realized what that was all about. And I'm not sure about you, but I know I've asked a lot of other people that have had near-death experiences, would they have rather not had it? And most would say, yes, it was the most uncomfortable, painful, difficult thing in my life, but it woke me up. It allowed me to live more authentically in who I am, and to connect to my gifts. The emotional upheaval that we are going through is for purpose. It is an opportunity. We talked about the fact that everyone connects to the unseen world, and sometimes we think that what we're going through has nothing to do with the unseen world. But I would disagree. I've come off of a fairly intense period of depression. I was ready to pack it all in. And I go through this on a regular basis. It's like, it's enough already. I'm not being able to get through. I'm not helping enough people. Take me home. I want to go home. And each time I go through that tunnel of darkness, new wisdom comes forth. So I believe And there are many people that say that in this period of intense change, the darkness comes to the surface. And that's what we're seeing. So I believe all of us that are going through the emotional upheaval are being nudged to connect stronger and stronger to the universal intelligence, to the guidance that's available to all of us. And one of those periods in sojourns in the tunnel of darkness, I realized that just channeling Shaltazar was too restrictive and it was not practical enough. And so I have started a series called Applying the Wisdom of Shaltazar. I actually call it Living the Wisdom. And I am taking all of the Shaltazar messages, 250 of them, and I'm starting to put them in essay form from my personal perspective so that maybe I can appeal to a wider audience that isn't interested in some woo-woo channeling wisdom. How do we put that into practice? How do I interpret it in such a way that I can help more people? So I believe what we're going through, no matter how painful, no matter how difficult it is an opportunity. And I encourage everyone to embrace it. I'll say one more thing, and that is that there's a lot of hoopla about artificial intelligence. And there are people who are very, very concerned about it. And there are people that are very excited because you have access to this artificial intelligence. And what Shaltazar says, it's kind of interesting that people would be so excited about accessing knowledge that is all based on the human experience. Okay? It is certainly wider than any one person has because it is the collective intelligence of all of the human beings upon the planet. And what they're saying is, but if you're excited about that, why would you not take advantage of connecting to the universal intelligence, everything that ever was, everything that is, and everything that will ever be? And if you can learn how to communicate and tap into the AI that we have, all of the different applications, then you may want to consider tapping into the universal intelligence for an even more exciting guidance than artificial intelligence can give you.
That makes a whole lot of sense. That's a very, very wise answer. All right, I have one last question for you before we run out of time, and that is a doozy. I'd like to ask you about negative energy, negative influences in our world. Do you believe there are negative influences, perhaps even coming from another planet? Anything that is directly influencing things that are going on now or in the past? But do you feel that maybe we have some negativity, negative entities, anything that's influencing some of the negative stuff that's going on? And people want to know, why is that allowed by source? Is it for our benefit? Is there any repercussions or penalties for people that are evil? Or big question. I'm going to let you take
Interesting. Yeah, fascinating question. I tend to focus more on the negative energy upon planet Earth because, as I said before, what goes on in higher dimensions or beyond this planet is all speculation, and I don't find it's of my greatest benefit to speculate on a negative energy coming from other planets and other galaxies or whatever, because I have enough to deal with the negative energy that's here on this planet. As far as the negative energy go, definitely of purpose. And one of the things I highly encourage people to do is find spiritual beliefs that resonate with you. Find a perspective, because nobody knows for sure. And the worst thing I think you can do is listen to my beliefs or your beliefs or what the religion tells you and accept it as the be all and end all. And what I have found is that by having my spiritual beliefs very malleable, I can come up with perspectives that make life a little easier for me and a little bit more tolerable and easier to cope with. I believe that that source we talked about is unity. It is oneness. It is unconditional love. I believe that planet Earth was created because that all-knowing, all-being oneness and unity wanted to understand itself beyond the unity. It therefore created planet Earth, the duality, the duality. And in order for the experiment to work, it gave the inhabitants of that planet free choice. In order for the source to understand this experiment, it put a piece of itself in each of the human beings as the observer. And so the question that you are asking about negativity is this experiment. We have the good and the bad, the love and the hate, the positive and the negative. And our role as human beings is to decide individually and collectively how we will navigate that duality. Will we allow negativity to win and possibly become extinct so that the experiment can start over again? Maybe, maybe not. I like to be an optimist and believe that the positivity can handle shifting, and so that we can become closer to that unity. I don't think we ever will, because that is the purpose of the experiment. But I truly believe, again, as the Hermetic Masters talk about in the Kabbalion, that we have the ability to move above the swing of the pendulum. And I know that's difficult because it does appear that the negative forces are winning. But it is an opportunity for those of us that are trying to bring forth love, compassion, understanding, and positivity, for us not to engage in the fight with the negativity. So, how can we learn to love those that are negative? I'm working on it, but I have to tell you, it's difficult. It is difficult. It is very, very difficult. But I believe that that is very similar to that first part of the question you asked. That negativity is coming up. The emotions are coming up. We are not allowed to get rid of the negativity, but throughout humanity, we probably could trace times where there have been more positive energy on our planet and more negative energy in times of war, in terms of conflict, which we are seeing a lot of. We are seeing the forces of negativity get a little bit stronger. And I would end by putting the challenge out there to those of us that don't like it, then embrace the positive energy, embrace the higher vibration, move to more compassion, move to more love, and learn to bring that forward. So, don't know if that answered your question, but certainly from the negativity on the planet, it is surging big time, which is what drives me into my state of depression every once in a while, because I'm here trying to make the world a better place, and I keep running up against this brick wall of negativity, and it is very frustrating. But do not give up. Find the love within yourself, cultivate it, and try to bring it forward to all of the negativity that we see around us. And I'll end by saying, if we truly believe that that source is unconditional love, it does not judge those that are acting or coming from the place of negative energy any differently than those that are coming from love. I know that's hard to believe. It baffles me sometimes, but if God can love all, then we have to do our best to love all as well.
That was exactly what I learned in my near-death experience, was that forgiveness was complete and love was unconditional. And that was the lesson. And
Right.
that you should look everyone in the eyes, not at the shell, but in the eyes, because you can see that spark of source in every single one of us. And that was the lesson that am supposed to share with everyone.
Well, and you are. And here we are having that conversation by asking the question that you did. And
Yeah,
so this is what it's all about. So don't give up. Don't be in despair. If you're going through emotional turmoil, it's your nudge. It's your nudge, right?
it
You don't
is.
want you don't want to have a near-death experience like Kat. You don't want to have some of the trauma that a lot of us have gone through. I've been lucky. Mine has been fairly minor. They cut out a few feet of my intestines, but that's about all. So do not despair. Do not plummet into that negativity. Do what it takes. Find your tribe. Find people that are willing to help you, and by all means, tap into that wisdom that's available to you.
And love them anyway, because they've been based in fear. And so they know not what they do, right?
You
Try to
got it.
love them anyway.
You got it.
Yeah. Well, I'm afraid we're out of time, but I may come, on my knees asking you to come back another time so maybe we can have another.
You won't have to come back on your knees because you can feel the energy that we have, and the world needs that. And
It
so it
does.
would be my pleasure. It would be my pleasure because hopefully the people that are listening to this are feeling the shift. They're feeling the love that have come from people who have done the work. And we're not going to say it's easy. We're not going to say it's easy, but it's worth it.
That's great. Well, tell us how we can reach you and what services that you offer.
Excellent. Probably the best way to reach me is my website, jeffreyeisen.com. So it is my first and last name.com. Everything is on my website. You can book a complimentary clarity call, and I'll speak to you one-on-one for 45 minutes. All the messages of Shaltazar are there. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Insight Timer. We talked about that before we went live. Is a wonderful meditation app. You can find my profile, Jeffrey Eisen. There's a free version of it. I do weekly lives on connecting to the unseen world and other topics. I have a YouTube channel at Shaltazar. It's a unique name, Shaltatzar, Shaltazar. It's on my website, but you can Google it. I even tried putting it into AI, and it tells you a bit about it. So those are probably the best ways. I do one-on-one coaching. I have an oracle card deck, 55 cards that I channeled from Shaltazar, and that's on my website as well. I'll do live Shaltazar channeling. I'll do anything I can to help you. Reach out to me. There's a contact form on my website. That's it.
Let's make sure we can spell your name right. It's Jeffrey, Jeffrey. Eisen is EISEN.
.com.
Right?
You got it.
.com. All right. Well, it has been an honor and a pleasure to have you on our show today. Really, really thank you for your insight and your inspiration. And to my listeners, I want to thank you for joining us today on Dial Up Intuition.